your customers don't get comfortable with that, right? They should be in a constant need of your services, or they should be in constant need of you.
It's really dangerous when your customer becomes really comfortable. Then it's easy for them to not see your value. AI is not coming to replace you. It's not enough to have knowledge.
One of your posts at LinkedIn said that you actually reframed fail as first attempt in learning, which is quite a powerful mindset shift. So today we have Mahmood Aziz with us, who is an AI and automation coach, digital transformation expert, and a partner at Avionis, who has led strategic tech across the globe and has helped business owners turn disruptive tech into real growth. Okay, so let me introduce Mahmood Aziz with us all the way from London. How are you doing, Aziz?
Hi, nice to meet you, Gav. Lovely. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And thank you for such a kind and warm introduction.
Yeah, pleasure to have you on the show. And I believe our audience is going to learn a lot from this conversation with your experience. And let's kick the conversation started. And I believe we should start from your personal background, I believe. So where are you
Sure.
originally from, and what led you to eventually settle in London?
So thank you. My parents were actually born in Jalandhar in India, but
Uh-huh.
then partition happened, so they moved across to Pakistan. I was born there and spent the first 3 or 4 years of my life in Karachi.
Mm-hmm.
My father was working for Middle East Airlines, and he went. They shut the office down, and he went to visit his sister in London, who was there at the time. Certain situations happened, and he wasn't able to get back.
Okay.
So he spent a few years in London, and eventually made enough money to come back and pick us up. And so we ended up coming to London all those years ago. More than 4 decades, 5 decades. I won't say how old I am, but I came as a very young boy. We settled, and I had my schooling here, primary, high school, sixth form, university. And originally I wanted to be a doctor. We'll come on to the other bits, but I ended up in the world of finance because my father worked in finance at the time. So my journey was a little bit, a couple of movements and partitions and emigrations and immigrations before ending up. And I have to say one thing, that cultural diversity is a good word, right? Actually was a really good education being brought up in two different cultures, right? They were quite, if you look at the Indian culture and the British culture, there's mixture of it because obviously the British were in India for many years, but there's still so many divergences that are really good in terms of trying to get an understanding. And I think that also helped me in where I am today.
Hmm. Hmm.
So after my education and work career and everything, I've settled near my parents. My father is still around, and my mother passed away last year. But I wanted, as is most Asian families, I wanted a family connection. So I stayed close, and therefore my children have a good relationship with their previous generations as well around them. So that was important to me. And that's where some of the Indian culture diverges from British culture, where normally the kids leave home at 16, 18 and kind of settle far. Although it's really interesting because now I see some of the younger generations coming through in Pakistan and India, and we see many people traveling the world, staying far away, but eventually many of them still bring their parents to live with them or be with them.
Hmm. Interesting. So you decided to adopt that traditional Indian culture to stay and spend time with your parents when they are old and to serve them out. Is that the thing?
Look, I'm the only son, right, and it still makes a
Yeah.
difference. Even though my sisters are very close by, and one lives, a couple live with my father right now. He still wants to talk to me, and it's sort of he's got the old, patriarchal mentality that says I have to talk to the son rather than make decisions with the daughters. It's
Hmm.
changing, but I've taught my children differently. I think we're all got great complementary skill sets to bring. And, I don't know what I don't know. Therefore, I'm always learning from people.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. So let's talk something about your partnership at Avionis as well as your portfolio work. So you position Avionis, or I would rather say Avionis positions itself as a business first IT support partner, right? So can you walk us through Avionis and more about your portfolio work, as you have been into AI and automation coaching business, right?
Sure. So there's a few things I'm involved in. The IT support side is very much that, as we understand, right? And many people on this podcast will maybe know, but India has a great tradition of providing services to people, right? It's how it's majority of the IT economy came about, by providing help to other people who didn't quite have fully the skill sets or the technical know-how or the resource availability. And that has meant that we've grown up with the ability to help people, right? Serving them in ways that um, was good at the time, cost effective, and efficient. But I think one of the principles that we're looking at is that many companies, and we'll come on to this later as well, many companies become complacent. You get used to providing the service stays at a certain level, the money keeps rolling in, and things become comfortable, shall we say, right? And when things are comfortable, it's actually quite a dangerous time. And if I look at some of the other work I do, I have a stake in a software business. I'm working with people in terms of advisory work on their boards and for coaching as well, and individuals and fractional work, right, as a COO. And all of these things, when you bring together the idea that you're doing a service, there's one important thing that was drummed into me really early on in my consulting career. And that was, I joined an ERP firm. I was joined the consulting side, and I'd been switched over from finance work to technology. And I had a really good coach and mentor, a guy called John O'Donnell, a brilliant Scots person. He was down to earth, but he'd had experience in both working in central government, local government, in bureaucracies, right, as well as private companies. So he brought a really great deal of wisdom to me. And maybe some of his words will pass on to the people listening today. He said two things to me. He said, you got two of these, one of these. Always use them in that proportion, right? So listen twice as much as you talk, which is a bit of at odds with this podcast because I'm talking. I'd like to listen twice, right? But the second thing he said was, it's really dangerous when your customer becomes really comfortable. If your customer is comfortable, then it's easy for them to not see your value once someone comes along with something that might be, on the face of it, more attractive. It's always important to have enough of a relationship where you keep your customer a little bit, just a little bit, on what we call the edge, i.e., you're still the expert that can help them. When you're doing coaching or advisory, people come to you because you have something that they value. If you let that comfortableness degrade to where they don't see the value anymore and you're just a service as a commodity, that's when you've lost your value edge. And I think this is something that people forget in the modern age, right? We have a lot of options for people to buy products quite easily as a SaaS offering, right? Pay your subscription and you've made your money. And as a product company or a company providing these, on a subscription basis, how much customer interaction do you really have? If you can't get close to your customer in the modern age, it's easy for them to forget the value exchange, to not see you as valuable, to see you as a commodity. And so one of the things we're trying to do with Avionis and the portfolio work that I do with other people is to always have a strong value exchange that is a long-term relationship. If you just want to make money and have a conversion, you're not providing value. You're just providing commodity. And if you're providing commodity or service as a utility, then you can be exchanged very quickly. And I think that's important, right? So what we're trying to do is to say, when we provide our work, yes, we provide a service, but we're always looking for ways to help our customer help their customer. So that means we don't sit around. We don't just provide a help desk. We don't wait for tickets. We're looking at providing, number one, education and awareness. I think this is really important, because if you're always giving something of value as an education or awareness without being asked for it or charging for it, then you're always seen as someone who can be, number one, knowledgeable, but secondly, you're sowing the seeds of who to go to first. In an age of commodity, and there's a great book called Funky Business. And if you're, the listeners here haven't heard of it, Funky Business talks about if everybody provides a similar product for a similar service, for a similar set of customers at a similar price, what sets you apart? And the only thing that sets you apart is where you can find your differentiators. Now, many people call these USPs, right? Unique selling positioning or similar, right? But it's about differentiation. It doesn't have to be much. You don't have to, come along wearing red and green and gold all the time. You don't have to have, fancy tricks for marketing, but you have to provide something where the customer, your client, the relationship you're building, they understand why you're differentiated and how. And you've got to keep that going, because what happens is over time, people will, catch up. There's imitation. Imitation is the best form of flattery, if you remember that, right? So I think what we're trying to do is, number one, set ourselves apart a little bit by providing excellent service, education and awareness, but also looking out where we can offer to help without it seeming like we're selling, right? We notice you're getting a lot of tickets in this. We're providing the insight and the feedback from the services we offer. It's not just a one way we consume, we take the money and just provide when it's needed, the service to fix a desktop, to update the software, to provide the cybersecurity package, or to update patch releases or whatever. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing we're trying to do is we're always looking for ways to, how do I say it? People, there's a saying here in the UK when I started in software, it was, do you eat your own dog food? Now that was a relationship to when someone in advertising or somewhere else said, you're a dog food company. If any of you have got your dogs, right? Do you feed your dogs your own dog food that you sell? And it's a way of saying to people that you are your own best customer, your own best reference. So the things you do for your clients, do you actually practice internally yourself? Very important point. Because if someone comes to you and says, how good is this? Right? If you tell them you do it, then they'll know that actually your business relies on this as well. It's a good differentiator. Many people sell things, sell services, but forget to apply it to their own business and organization. It's quite interesting. We're so busy selling the product. We're so busy trying to get out and get revenue. We forget what it is we're trying to achieve in the first place. So that's the second thing. The third thing that we're trying to do is, having done that, how can we take those lessons and apply it on behalf of our customers? There's no point learning something internally and keeping it to yourself. So I think that's really important in this day and age, that we should always remember that lessons we're learning, we should be telling the world, sharing it and not keeping it. In a world of infinite knowledge and easy availability to just search something on Google or ChatGPT, whatever you're doing, that differentiation comes back to the application of what you know, not the fact that you know it. So that's what the other side in terms of in terms of the portfolio career. I think the things that we're trying to do, or I'm trying to do personally, is if you don't need an expert anymore, and everybody can be an expert, right? It started with Google, and now it's getting more pervasive with things like the LLMs and the platforms built on top of the LLMs. How do you get your voice, right? Because, we've all been guilty of this. We're all lazy. Humans find the path of least resistance. We want to do things that gets to the end goal quickly. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. But in an era, and I say this to many people out there who are, wondering about how this is going to affect them. I've got a lot of hope for you, right? And I do mean, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. AI is not coming to replace you. And I know it's been said many times, but the thing to remember is it's not enough to have knowledge. If you look at most of the people around you, the fact you're running a business, or if you're consuming businesses services for your own business, you took steps that many people didn't. Especially if you're an owner or a part of the management team or a founder or something like that. You've taken a step that most of the world does not take. You've gone out and said, I'm going to try and not be just an employee. I'm going to build something. I'm going to create something. I want something of my own. That's a scary step, but it's a courageous step. Now, for those people who did this, and they did it based on an expert knowledge, right? The trick to remember is that humans don't buy just because you have knowledge. If I were to ask you, right, and say, take a couple of your recent successes, you were telling me before we started the podcast of some new proposal that you had won and successfully concluded, right? Think back on why the customer chose you, right? There would have been a number of factors. It would have been your past record. It would have been your price. It would have been your personality. It would have been your availability. It would have been the resources you've got. So many factors. But ultimately, people buy from people that they can ultimately say, I'm trusting you with my money and my time and my resources to give me the goal I want. It's not easy, right, to get that full rounded experience from just an AI or from an AI enabled service. Somewhere in that journey or the customer engagement, someone's going to say, I'm trusting you. Now, one of the things I'd like to bring in here is if many people, I don't know if, I've worked a lot in the startup scene and I've worked around both VCs, private equity, family office, and angels. One of the things I've seen, especially in angel investing, people don't invest in the product or the idea, right? Many of the angels that you would have seen around or on this call or that you may know, they are inspired by the person. They're putting their money in the person, not the idea. Right? There are some sophisticated angel investors, but many of them are saying, well, I'm doing this because 80% of my money in the UK, we're covered by the SEIS scheme in case. So 80% of it is a tax write-off. I can, get that back via tax. So it's not really about the money. For some of them, it's about helping people. For some of them, about it getting good returns. For some of them, it's because they're in a group of people and a syndicate and they're doing it with others. Many factors. But most of the time, angel investors invest because of the person, not the idea, not the product, not the platform. VCs, private equity, and others, right? They have more, I think, sophisticated, evidence, data-backed, spreadsheet-based ways of doing it. But think about it this way. So the first interaction for many of our businesses on here today and the people running them, you're dealing with people. People buy from people. And yes, there are things coming down the line that we want to put in place. But all of my work is based around the idea I want to work with people. I want to help people. I want them to succeed because it's something I value. So that's the value exchange.
Very, very interesting. The description that you gave about your business and your portfolio work was really interesting. So I had this very curious question in my mind. So as you told that when you're providing a service as a startup or as an agency, you should be very closely assured that your customers don't get comfortable with that, right? They should be in a constant need of your services, or they should be in constant need of you. Okay, so how?
Let me turn that around. Let
Yeah.
me turn that around a little bit, please, if I may.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not that I want my customers to be in need of me. Customers need to be, always aware. It's actually the other way around. Most people, and this is an interesting thing, right? When you sell, when you are a business and you've got an expertise, right? You go out with that viewpoint. The key thing for how I'm running my portfolio businesses and the work I do with people is I do it the other way around. My focus is on what the customer's customer needs. How am I helping my customer to help their customer? It is not about me having something. It is about the other way around. If all you do is have a view of yourself as a central, what we call the fisheye view of the world, right? I'm the center of the universe. And this is the majority of businesses. I've got a product. I've got the service. I've got this. I've got the expertise. The world needs it. No, people come to you when they have a need, right? Yes, there are some things that you can, and there's a lot of this in the B2C world as well, right? People come because you've got something that nobody else has. And there are examples of this, right? Tradespeople, servants, for example, people who help, domestic help, right? I don't want to say servants, domestic help, but people who have, different way of expressing their work, services and value. Ultimately, it's all about the other way around. You have to be always aware of what's going on with your customer. And this is the challenge in today's modern way of working. SaaS has completely tipped everything upside down. When I started sales, for example, I was the one with the knowledge. People used to come to me and I would expand and explain, here's my knowledge, here's what the product does, here's the service we do, this is why we're fantastic, this is why you need to use us. Modern customer buying journeys have changed everywhere, B2C, B2B. Now they have the information at their fingertips. They can assess you against hundreds of people like you, right? Because we live in a global economy as well.
Correct.
So everything is switched. But unfortunately, a lot of businesses haven't switched their view of the world in the same way. Most customers, if you look at buying journeys, in a B2B environment at least, they will only talk to somebody about 70% plus of their buying journey. That's when they come to you, right? They're doing the research. They're going to Google. They're going to ChatGPT. They're looking at friends. They're looking at people in their same industry. They're looking at industry benchmark reports. They're looking at analyst reports, whatever it may be. They're doing the research without you knowing. When they get to a point where they say, I need to know a little bit more, then they're going to engage. It's not like it used to be where you went out, advertisement was on the screen and they rang you up and said, I found you in the UK, we had something called Yellow Pages, right? A big directory, big fat book. People would look, find the service they wanted, find the number. There was a big ad and they would ring the number, right? It doesn't work anymore. It's not the same. And you will have seen this in your own business. I see it in my business all the time. They come to me and said, right, we're looking for X, Y, and Z, and they're very specific.
Right.
It's not like, oh, I need to know about IT support anymore. They're well informed.
Yeah.
So when you're in such a market, when you're in such a position, it's up to you as a business provider, especially if you're a service or agency owner, right? Even software developer or selling products. You've got to be aware of how that product or service is working for the customer, right? And how it's helping them. Because there are two important things that many businesses forget, especially in this modern world of SaaS-enabled, buying online, subscription-based. It's easy to chase new customers. But in chasing new customers to get more revenue, you're forgetting the people who helped get you where you are. Now, here's some interesting facts. For most people online in SaaS or agency businesses, what do you think is the cost of acquisition for new business versus getting new business from an existing customer? Any idea?
No, I don't have any idea about it.
And it's something that many small businesses forget. How much did it cost you to get that work? In a small business, you should not be chasing revenue. Because of my background as being trained in finance, working with EY as an auditor, learning about numbers, working as a business leader, working as a unit head, practice head, all these things, I got very familiar with numbers, with metrics, with KPIs, with outcomes, with goals, with budgets and forecasts. And if there's one thing I urge every business owner and person working in any leadership position, you've got to get familiar with numbers and finance. Why? because there are two things, and we'll come to later, but there are two things that really affect young growing businesses. When you're scaling, until you get to your first 100K monthly recurring revenue, you're always going to be up and down. Things are going to be lumpy. It's going to be a roller coaster of a journey. So there are two things that are very important up front. It's not enough to make a sale. Did you at least break even or make some profit? Ask yourself the question, of all the deals you've done, all the business you're doing, are you actually making a profit on that deal? Really important question. So when you're pricing, when you got proposal, all these things, it makes a difference. It's easy to chase the deal and the revenue. Now, the second thing in terms of linking back to a new customer and getting one as brand new versus existing business and getting new work from them, it takes approximately 7 times as much effort, right, in terms of cost to acquire a new customer as it is to get new business from an existing customer. Think on that. On average, across B2B, 7 times more expensive. All your efforts, think about what you're doing. So go back to the point, and I'll link it back to why you need to be mindful of your existing customers. Small businesses grow not from lead generation activities. They don't grow from advertising. They don't grow from all the efforts you're putting in spending money on SEO and Google Ads. 90% of your business, if not more, will come from referrals. Somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who worked with you. Okay. And that's why when people are working, especially in the early days, everyone chases lead gen, ads, getting visible, being in front of people. Great. But what happened if you focused on your existing customers and said, now I've worked with you, can we get some more work? Now we've worked with you. Would it be okay if you recommended me to 3 people, 5 people, 10 people? Can you set up a meeting? Just think about journeys that you've got that are cold engagements versus warm engagements. Look at the effort expended. Look at the time taken. So I urge everybody out there listening, all the work you're doing, brilliant. You may have some great lead gen ideas. You may have some great campaigns. You have some effort that you put into your content marketing, right? Your LinkedIn posts, everything else. At the end of it, what makes the most difference? Your customer, your existing customers, your foundation customers, the ones who stay with you all the time, regardless of what happens, the ones that will, in spite of your mistakes, and we do make mistakes, right? We do end up doing something that wasn't quite right. In spite of that, they'll still work with you. Because remember, at the end of the day, they trusted you to give you your business to them, their business to you.
Quite elaborative and very, very on point, because this is something which is very, very required for the early starters or the small businesses, right? This is some advice that is really required for small and mid-sized businesses to grow further, right? And
Sure.
and talking about this, I just had a curiosity in my mind. So you started so I was going through your education and experience background, the mandatory podcasting thing to be done before the mandatory research to be done. So you started in biochemistry, then you, as you told, that you were also into finance and then sales, and now eventually landed up at AI and automation, and you are helping businesses to transform, right, via your coaching and via your knowledge. So what was that pivotal moment that pulled you from sales or from marketing to this coaching side?
It's quite interesting, right? So I originally, and this goes back to the biochemistry piece. I originally wanted to be a doctor.
Okay.
And at that time, I wanted to be a pediatrician, right, helping children. So that was something in the back of my mind. I really enjoyed, that kind of. And there are a few things that, again, look out for it. I'm going to publish something over the next few weeks on this on LinkedIn, and the link between babies, youngborn babies, newborn toddlers, and what we can learn from them for our business approach. Right. So it's something I've had for a while, and it'd be really interesting for people. So look out for that. Wanted to be a doctor was about helping people, right? So that was always in there. My parents, like many parents, always helping uncles and aunties and go help them, go do this, pick people up. We had friends, guests, relatives staying. I always give up my room. I was the only boy in my house, so my room was always the one taken for guests to come and stay. So helping people. And if I go back to changing from kind of working to being a business leader, owning my own business, helping people outside, that came back to that helping to help others by my services and knowledge. There are a couple of things that also happened along the way. So we're losing some of it, especially with remote and hybrid working. And that is that my journey has always been about other people helping me learn. Most of the kind of both education and work experience has always been working with 2 or 3 close mentors, managers, people who said, Mahmood, think about this. Mahmood, what about this? When things didn't go right, they would explain. They would always put the arm around the shoulder. Sometimes they shout at me, right? We all need a good kick up the backside. But many times, and if you look at it, it's, if you're fortunate enough, right, and you've had family all the way through, it's how our parents dealt with us, right? The beginning.
Right.
They let us make mistakes. They let us have failure. And it's something that, again, I talked about, you may come on to later, but failure is not bad. And the thing that I had was always someone somewhere giving me guiding and coaching. I had a great maths teacher. We all got one teacher that we remember fondly, right? That give us inspiration and stimulation. We always, and all that time, I was learning the same techniques without realizing it. So a math teacher, biochemistry professor, accounting professor, my first mentor at EY, right? My first mentor at Systems Union, who I talked about, John O'Donnell, my mentor at my next company, and so on and so on. So each journey, each employment gave me different teachings and learnings. And then your colleagues as well, some who are older, some who are younger, they all feed into that knowledge and education. And I think we also have this in our traditions and history. Right. And that is normally, I'm going to go off topic a little bit, but if we say, for example, take the great Indian traditions of raga and dance and Karnataka and so on, right? The word ustad, and for the non-Hindi speaking, it means mentor, guide, guru, whatever you want to call it, right? But we have this concept of someone who has achieved excellence, right? Yeah. There may not be perfection, but if you're a Buddhist, then Buddha was the route to nirvana and perfection. So all our culture, all our traditions, all our history has some person who is a role model, right? As someone to aspire to. We have this in our personal life. We have it in our professional life. And all the way through my work experience, I was fortunate to have good role models, good mentors, good guide, good starts who taught me. And that is the cycle of business, of education, of learning and life. We all need people around us to guide us. And so slowly in the back of my head, it was, I've had the benefit of this. Now I need to give back. And that's where I ended up in kind of turning. So the pivotal moment was, I think, 2010. So 2010, the organization I was at was Steria. I was running the information management practice at the time. We had a big team, typical, development and all the rest of it. But I was conscious that we did not have a mechanism for grooming young people. So we started a graduate boot camp. Now, the first time we ran it, we just had one. I only had the budget for one graduate, right? But I took a personal interest, right? So if you're listening, Sunny Patel, right? He was my first graduate. And I actually took him under my wing. And he was the inspiration for the things that followed. Because he was the first person that I kind of, fresh out of university, very eager, very, in those days, what I call corrupted by academia, and we've all been there, right? You come out with all these fantastic ideas, and you come up with this, earnestness, your ideologies, and all the rest of it. But you don't know how the real world of work works.
Right.
And so, in that first 3 months, instead of just giving to somebody else, I had regular weekly, monthly discussions for the first 3 to 6 months, I think. And that's where I kindled that kind of desire to coach and help people. Obviously, I had reports. I had 8 direct reports, and I used to spend nearly 8 to 15 hours a week on the phone with them or in front of them, regular meetings, 15-minute catch-up calls. I was doing daily stand-ups before I knew it was a daily stand-up, right? So on the drive to work or before reaching work or after reaching the office, 15 minutes with each of the 8 people, right? Just what's going on. Then some time to think. But Sunny Patel was, I think, where that drive and change to kind of help people and mentor them was kindled. We went on eventually to have multiple graduate boot camps. We took, I think, about 30 plus people through it from the ages of 17 all the way to there were older graduates of about 23.
Okay. Quite interesting. So we can say that the helping nature came from the roots, or the experiences that you have had across your journey, and or we can say that you gain knowledge throughout your journey, and the helping nature came from the traditional roots or the upbringings of your parents that they had in your childhood, right? So this
Sure.
is the combined package is now you are the AI and automation coach out there helping out businesses to grow and achieve their milestones and their dream targets out there, right?
If, if you look at it, the other thing that is a continuous thread
Mm-hmm.
is that once I made the switch to tech, right? So when I first worked for my first kind of role in IT, it was a
Mm-hmm.
software company. It was all about helping others, right? So my first 3 months induction and training, I didn't quite get 2 years of fresher training like you do in some of the big Indian firms.
Okay.
But I got 3 months in actually running and working in support. That
Okay.
means you're answering the phone, people
Okay.
ringing up for help. So it was inculcated with me. It was a kind of ground into me. You need to help people. And what I also learned at that time, and this is something that I think is really important, just because you're the expert doesn't mean to say that when you speak to people that your expertise will immediately be understood. Key point. Just because you know something, you've learned, you've had the training, can the other person on the end of the line, or your emails, or your writings, or your presentations, or your public speaking, are they understanding you? So the art of speaking at a level of the other people is a really important skill we need to learn, especially if you're in services or an agency, or you're using, especially in tech. Normally in tech, you're quite ahead of the curve compared to many people in terms of their technical understanding and ability.
Right.
Even today, right? If you think about your own parents or your own grandparents, other people around you, or other seniors in your world, their knowledge and understanding of how to deal with physical and software advancements is at a different stage and level to you, right? The baby's being born now, right? They're digital natives. They're born with a screen in their hands, more or less. Sad, but unfortunately, it's a fact of life, right? But they work with things intuitively in a way that, my parents couldn't, and maybe my kids work in a way that I don't. And nothing is more, relevant to that than when I look at how my youngest son, right, deals. He's got a phone running here. He's got 2 screens in front of him. He's got headphones on. He's got a YouTube video running. He's got multiple screens open. He's playing games with his friends. He's communicating and talking. He's got Discord running. He's got a Twitch stream running. He's got so many inputs at one. For me, that's sensory overload, right? But his neural pathways have developed in a way that mine haven't. So he can cope with it, and I'm overwhelmed. Now, think of it the same way for your clients. You have the multiple neural pathways of knowing how to deal with the tech, with the service, with the product, with the technology, with whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming to you because they have a gap. They
Right.
know something, but they know fully everything. Your job is to help them apply that, your knowledge, to get an outcome that they're wanting. But in order to
Mm-hmm.
do that, if you talk at your level, how will they understand what you mean?
Right. So you need to understand the gap between their knowledge and your knowledge, and you need to, uh, translate, and you need to get at to their level, and then you need to define the solution to their problem out so that they can understand it pretty well and they can trust you out on the process. Yeah.
I mean, when I started, there was no such thing as a business analyst. There was no
Okay.
such thing as a technical analyst, right? There was no such thing as a solution architect.
Okay.
I was hired to work in the company I was because I had intimate knowledge of accounting processes. So when I talked to people in departments that were going through the transformation, I already knew their problems and pains. I was able to talk at their level intuitively. Now, what we've done is we've created brand new roles. We've created brand new structures. We've created brand new ways of working. We've now split the business side of things from the technical side of things.
Right.
In my early days, didn't have that. I was the pre-sales architect. I was the solution architect. I was the technical architect. I was the business analyst. I was the functional consultant. I was the technical consultant. I had to know the software inside out to configure it to deliver the results that people wanted. You know, all in one kind of thing, jack of all trades. Now, I'm not saying that this is right or wrong, but it was the way it worked then. I can see the value of splitting things up because it means we can get a lot more specialism and expert knowledge of people. But I also think sometimes it overcomplicates things, right?
Hmm.
Especially when you're a young company. And this is where I think, having people who know a little bit more about domains and function and business as well as technical is good, right? There's no, as a consultant, there's no one answer. And I'd be happy for people to ask me comments, share their thoughts, give alternative views. Always happy to learn, right? But as a consultant, I know you have to have multiple perspectives.
Hmm. To help your clients in a better fashion, right? So to get the best
I,
for your clients.
I think, in that I'm fortunate in that I had 3 or 4 careers in different fields. Therefore, I bring those different lenses and think about things probably more uniquely than others, right? Because I'm multitasking on numbers, I'm multitasking on people, I'm multitasking on tech, and I'm multitasking on kind of human relationships at the same time. I'm bringing all these experiences when discussing and thinking about a situation.
Hmm. Quite interesting. So I have this thing in my mind. So you have had so many things rolling around. You are also into tech, you're also into finance, you're also into sales, right? You're helping people out for to grow their businesses. You are into consulting as well. And what I liked, one of your posts at LinkedIn said that you actually reframed fail as first attempt in learning, which is quite a powerful mindset shift, right? Because
Yes.
having such a great varied experience across different streams or different areas is really good, and having that, keeping that mindset is really amazing. So can you share one of your failure points that ended up turning into, your mantra of growth?
Yeah. Well, look, one of the things that happened after about a year of my first tech job, right? So I'd done 3 months in support. I started doing consulting. I was going out doing projects. And then I was selected for my team to go and learn a new module, right? The company had built new product development and all the rest of it. So I got sent for a boot camp to learn, and it was in the areas of manufacturing. If people are familiar, there's a term out there called MRP, which is manufacturing requirements processing, right? Which is slightly different to ERP, which is enterprise resource planning. Um, and like with all things, you've got to apply the knowledge you won't go away. So I went away, was gone, I think 2 or 3 weeks, came back. There was someone given to me as a guide, Jeroen, wherever you are, Jeroen, thanks a lot. Jeroen was based in Holland, but would come to and from the UK. And we eventually sold our first customer. It was down in Southwest London, in Chelsea, a company called Magnificent Mouchoir, right? And they were people who created, in the early days of internet sales, they were selling cufflinks, ties, cravats, gentlemen's accessories online.
Okay.
But they needed a finance system, an ERP system, whatever, to handle everything. And so being fresh, I took an approach. I went along, I met their finance director at the time. Unfortunately, I can't remember her name at the moment, but the finance director of Magnificent Mouchoir, we sat down, we had the early discussions, I made notes, I took the requirements, and then I started kind of thinking about how to put it together. Now, instead of doing the great thing, which is having a validation and a sanity check with someone, I was the only one on the project. I'm the be all, I'm the end all. I'm the only person in the UK with this knowledge, so I can't even talk to my colleagues in the UK. I went down a certain pathway and we started building. And I documented some things, but not everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because in those days, the configuration of the platform was enough to understand what you've done. But lesson number one, right? Failure to document. And it would come back to bite me a few weeks later. Then there were certain ways of having understood requirements. Then came the point of scope creep. And instead of taking a sanity check, documenting it, writing it down, going back to the salespeople and saying, hey, are we covered for this under the contract or the budget or anything like that? I went ahead. Okay, we can do that. Right? So you can see where I'm going in terms of setting myself up for failure. We've got number one, very little documentation. Number two, accepting scope creep. Number three, not asking for kind of validation from my betters and people who knew the stuff better than me. And then number four, we were like getting close to deadlines and we were still not halfway through. At that point, I thought I should ask for help. But as with all these things, right, we're 80% of the way through the budget and only 50% of the way through the work. And Jeroen came over. We had a chat. We went to see the client. I sat there, a little bit chagrined, all the rest of it. But afterwards, right, Jeroen took over. He finished the project in 2 weeks. He got it all done within the time frames. But he did not let me sit, right? It would have been easy for him to just go back and not tell me anything. He could have said, right, you're not good enough. We're not going to do this again. And I think the good thing that I was very fortunate that he then took the time to take me through and say, here's where it went wrong. This is why this happened. So, and I'm not going to say, but I think it's about 30 years ago. 30 years ago, he took the time to share with me and say to me, okay, you effed up, but this is what happened. And why I could remember those four things is because he took the time to say, you didn't come to me when you said you had a plan in mind. You didn't come to me and say, here's what I'm going to do. I could have guided you then. You didn't do it. You then started doing things without writing things down. You didn't document fully. You then had questions and things that you weren't unsure of, the client isn't unsure of, right? But they're relying on you to provide the guidance and the surety. So at that point, you didn't write down scope creep. You didn't say this could be a big change. We've changed what you wanted to do when we talked about the deal, the sale, the proposal, and now there's something different. And then fourthly, right, you've gone through and you haven't done the sanity checks. You haven't gone back and done all the pieces about working with me. So altogether, those four things, right, still sit with me because he took the time and said, here's where you can improve. And I think that was the key thing, that this piece around first attempt in learning is so important. And it's actually the link to what I'm going to write about in terms of young babies and toddlers, about what they teach business. And the first one of that, right, is that if you look, when we're growing up, parents don't tell us off when we're trying to walk. If any of you have got photos, video cameras, all those kind of things, little movies from your phone that your parents have of you trying to walk, what do you get nearly 100% of the time from a parent to a child? It's something we get very little of in business, and it's encouragement. Right? You didn't do it successfully this time. It's okay. Get up, try again. You smile, you hold out your arms, right? There's so many things that happen when a little baby in a family environment, right, is being growing up with people around them that are on their side. And I think a lot of businesses need to take this into account and put this, that when they are working with people, everyone is learning. Someone new comes in from outside. They don't know what's what. They all need guidance and help in growing to be what you are.
Very well said. And this is something that usually people miss out when they try and build something out, when they try something new, when they try to build their businesses out. And I think this should be really something that should be taken in consideration for a very serious point, right? Because there should be someone who should guide you out through the process and should give you that encouragement, as you talked about. Yeah, hey, it's completely fine if you fell this time. You should work on these things, and you should try things harder, and you should try it in this way.
For definite. I mean, look, growth, and I know it's a topic we said we would discuss, right? But maybe we could introduce that, right? So growth is a result of many different things. Growth cannot happen right now, right? Who knows what might happen in 2 years, right? But growth does not happen on your own.
Okay.
Most organizations have many people, one or two to begin with, yourself, your co-founder. But go back to the day you hired your first employee. How amazing you felt. We can have someone. Now, it might be you might have felt relief. Oh, someone else can do the work. Now I don't have to do it, right? But there were so many things that went into your psyche, your brain, of being able to do that. Organizations have traditionally grown by bringing more people in. But the important thing about growth is that if you think back to the reason why you decided to have your own company rather than work for somebody else, can you pinpoint some of the factors or the main factor that went into it? Either you're lucky and you have a family background or history where they encourage you to have an entrepreneurial spirit and do your own things. But for many of us, it's because we don't want to do things the way other people want us to do things. That's one of the primary drivers, right? We want our way of doing things to be the benchmark. This is the beginning of what I call company culture. My vision of how I want to work. If you're with co-founders, then it's the combined vision. But there's something that says collectively, individually, here's how I want people to be. So growth in companies, there's two really important factors. One is you've got to have a great, obviously, solution, product, service, or whatever it might be, differentiated, that people want, has value. The other part that's really important is what kind of people you want to join you on your journey. So finding the right kind of person that fits you rather than hiring somebody that you have to work around. Really important. So when you're hiring, it's as important in a small stage growing company to find people who are on your level in terms of your vision for the company,
Right.
or someone who has the desire and aptitude to get there.
Hmm.
So you don't have to have somebody who fits the mold, right? No one hires and finds, typically, you can't find the perfect person immediately. I haven't done it so far. I've been trying, right? But what you have to hire for is the person that has the ability and desire to come to your level, to come on your journey. So that means you've got to have a good sense of culture that says, when you join us, this is what you can expect. Nowadays, people have some kind of employee handbook, guidebook, or website, or a page, or somewhere where they can see what you're about. Stories, The second thing is, companies growing at some point, and this is the hardest thing for many people, you got to write it down. I think we're fortunate in that nowadays we could probably record a video instead of writing it down, right? You could do voice notes. You've got abilities that we didn't have in my day.
Yeah.
And I like to use these things to kind of say to people, welcome, right? So meet them individually, keep an eye on them, have some kind of interaction, make sure they join the culture, make them feel fit in. People do not leave jobs. People don't leave jobs. They leave the person who is their direct line manager. Very important distinction.
Yeah.
If they like where they are, if they enjoy being there, if they enjoy turning up for work, chances are they will find what they need, right? But remember, I don't know how many of you have studied MBAs or management courses, but there's a guy called Frederick Maslow. He wrote Maslow's Needs of Hierarchy, or Hierarchy of Needs, sorry. And he talked about, the base things in 5 levels. And you may have seen some, memes on that where the bottom of the pyramid now is Wi-Fi instead of security, all right? But he talked about the 5 levels. And the top level was something called self-actualization. And it was done after a study where at a time when people thought that people left their jobs for more money. And what this study showed, that Maslow did, was that people didn't leave for more money. It's where they left, where they felt they would be more appreciated and valued. Right? So if someone was in a job where they felt really appreciated and valued, and their salary was, say, I don't know, £100,000, someone came to them to a job offer to a bigger company, the salary was £150,000, but actually their role was smaller. They were part of a big machine, a smaller cog. Much of the time, they would not move because that journey to self-valuation, actualization, was too high for them. And they felt better valued here where they stayed and got less money. So growth is about people, because it's about relationships. When you're selling, it's about the people you work with. You might have associates to begin with before you bring them on as employees. Your employees will then be your ambassadors, the advocates for what you do. They're a reflection of you, your company, your culture. All these things are so important. So that's growth. Second one about growth, apart from people, is to do with your systems and processes. When you start growing and scaling, the one thing that gets left behind is, what are the ways of doing things? What are the systems and processes you should have? When you get too big where you can't personally engage with new employees, right? Sometimes happens somewhere around about 50 to 100, somewhere in that space. Then you as an owner, you can't deal with people, right? Individually. You're so busy. Other people are busy. Then you have to have some way of saying, we got to keep that culture going. Now, I've been part of at least 2 businesses where we started small and scaled rapidly. Blue Prism was about 60 people when I joined or something, and we grew to about 1,200, 1,500 in 2.5 years. That's really rapid.
Right.
One of the things that we did in order to help with culture was that everybody who was coming in for a job, for an interview, was interviewed by at least a panel of 3 existing people who'd been there at least 6 months,
Okay.
preferably a year, and if not more, right? But the panel would be the sanity check. It wasn't just one-on-one and a hiring manager type thing, you know. It was, will this person, based on 3 or more people's viewpoints, come in and not disrupt the culture? So
Hmm.
it also gives the existing people, especially when there's rapid growth, some feeling of belonging, having a viewpoint, and having uh, um, the ability to take management decisions to bring in people.
Hmm.
So it's something that people forget about, right? Because at some point you will hire someone, and it happens, right? Who doesn't quite have the same view, who wants to impose their views. And typically it happens at a senior management level. At some point you decide and say, I need someone with a corporate background. And in a scaling company, when you bring someone from a corporate background, inevitably they want to bring their corporate way of doing things, and they start introducing new ways of working, new processes, and because you've given them the authority to do so, that's when you start to see a little bit of shift. It's also when typically politics starts to rear its head and people start trying to pick sides. So it's really important that as you grow, you try and keep that culture as much as possible for as long as possible.
Hmm. So,
But that doesn't,
yeah, yeah. Please go ahead.
hmm, but that doesn't mean you don't forget about having structure. You've got to have
Correct.
the foundation and the ability to build on top of what you've got, right? So foundational things are very important. And you should always have a list in your strategic planning. Are we still sticking to our foundations? As we build
Hmm.
more layers of the house, right? If you look at construction, you always have a solid foundation. If your foundation is weak, the organization fails, the building
Hmm.
fails. It's no different in business. Strong foundations allow for many layers of growth on top. If you look at the skyscrapers in Pune right now, right? They came about because someone somewhere built a really solid foundation.
Correct.
The ones that fall over in the rain, poor construction, or there are accidents, they happen. It's because they didn't have strong foundations.
Accurate.
So make sure as a business, you've got your strong foundations. That means the vision, the culture, strategic planning, the right kind of people, the right kind of onboarding, and then put in systems and processes that meet your needs for 1 or 2 years to come.
Hmm.
So if you start with one set of things, I mean, take a look at it. Why do people go from, let's take an example. Right. People go from Word to Excel to Zoho or HubSpot to Salesforce, right? CRM systems. Why do they do
Right.
that? Because at each stage of the journey, it meets the needs. More complexity means you've got to have something that meets the complex needs.
Right.
So it's always important to have those strong foundations to grow with you.
Hmm. Okay. So, as you told that every business should have a strong foundation to grow. They should have their vision, their team that solid that they can build their foundations out and they can plan their growth structure accordingly. But there are many founders who are trying to scale and they still follow those growth strategies which are outdated in this era of technology, and they're trying to figure out where they are missing out or where they are messing with the growth strategies, but they're not able to figure out. So from your perspective, what are some outdated or misguided growth strategies that you still see businesses using?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, right? Because again, as a consultant, right, part of me says there are many ways to get there, right? So
Yeah.
nothing is wrong, and goes back to my thing about failure is the first attempt in learning, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm going to offer a methodology or anything like that because I don't believe in that thinking in the first place. It's down to individual ways of working. But I go back to the beginning. One of the key things that many people have my product solves a need and is the best thing. That is the first point of a growth strategy that will fail, because there are many people building things because it's technically good. And what they're missing out on and forgetting about on is validation that actually they're building something that people will want. Not only will they want, but they'll be prepared to pay money for. Right? You're not doing this as a charity for many people, right? Obviously, for the people who are developing open source, brilliant, right? You're providing a service, but eventually, most open source projects at some point commercialize. I'm not saying monetize; they commercialize, right? There is some kind of value exchange. So, I think the first thing is for growth strategies is that actually most of the growth strategies out there work, right? They're tried and tested. It's actually individuals or founders that forget to follow the principles, number one. So the two, if you're in technology, for example, the two ones that are most prevalent today, sales-led growth or product-led growth, right? SLG, PLG. Both of them have their advantages and disadvantages. But ultimately, if you are a business and you're in the business of making a commercial gain, i.e. profits, then the key thing you need to be doing is to look at it from the point of view of saying, if you're doing product-led growth, it means having something that people can test and then working with a foundation core of potential and actual customers. They're going to be your development partners. What people tend to do is they create an MVP, they do a beta release, alpha release, beta release, and then a production release. And then they say, that's it. Everything from that is product roadmap. And I think this is the big gap. If you go from your production release and immediately start saying, here's my product roadmap, you're missing the point. Your production release is actually your 0.1 production release. It's not V1. That's the mentality you got to have. Yeah, alpha, beta, and then say your first production release is 0.1. Why? Is because you now need to work with your foundation customers, your development partners. They're going to pay you, but they're actually going to give you the feedback. It's better at this point to halt, not get more customers, but actually work with your customers that have trusted you, have invested in you, work with them to get your production ready V1. Because if they stick with you for 6 months, a year, and they're still happy, and they're still paying, that's validation.
Right.
What people tend to do is miss this step. Right? Now, the corollary is if you're doing sales-led growth, and you're doing marketing, and you're doing a lot of investment, you've fortunate enough, maybe you have a seed round, maybe you got some money from angels, whatever, and you spend a lot of time doing SEO, doing Google ads, meta ads, you're doing lead generation, cold calling, emailing, whatever, right? This is sales-led growth. What tends to happen with sales-led growth is that the sales team, the marketing signals, the sales signals coming back tend to drive your product development. And sometimes this is, as we say in English, there's an English idiom, the tail wagging the dog or the cart coming before the horse. Because at this point, you're getting a whole bunch of requirements. And because you're going out to many people, you're getting conflicting signals. You're getting conflicting messages about what people need. And what tends to happen, this is when the CTO, the CPO, and the founders suddenly go, damn, we've got to build all these features.
Okay.
And they end up blowing money for no reason because they've suddenly bloated their tech stack and their features without thinking what it's all for. Right? You're so eager to please what the market wants, you're forgetting about this is a journey. So rather than having kind of a pause for sales-led growth, you've accelerated your product roadmap, and now you've got 1,000 things on your development roadmap. And you're trying to figure that in. How are we going to do this? And you're changing your agile structure development. You're changing your release roadmap. You're changing what happens when, and it's overwhelming. So in an SLG mode, it's actually going back and saying, what are the patterns we can observe? What are the things that are key now? What are the things that make us money? Right? You forget about the commercial realities when you have lots of feature requests because you're suddenly going after solving the pains of customers. What you want to do is at that point, stop and say, where are we going to make money from? What are the things people are asking for that actually make a difference that lots of customers will value, not one or two? Because how much is noise? How much is someone saying, I like to have, rather than if it's not there, I won't use it. So take the time to take all these information coming in, the signals coming in from the market in a sales-led growth, and have a way to filter them, to segment them, to prioritize them before deciding, is it something we want to work on?
Pretty amazing and pretty detailed. So, and I really loved the way you describe each and everything, and you give an elaboration on each and every question. So, okay, let's hop on from the business growth and the strategic part to the AI part, where our audience will have a variety of interest to know about. So, tell me. What are some of those AI tools and platforms that you personally rely on to stay productive and deliver results out there as an AI and automation coach?
Sure. For me, because I'm in where I am,
Okay.
and I have partners as well. So here I got mentioned Avi, my partner from Avionis. Abhijit is comes from a complementary set of skills to me, so we work really well together. Other partners are Hugh and Mark from Komozo, and let's talk about Akshay from Amura. So we're it's all about working with people who've got complementary skills. We don't rely on tech, but we're also grown up enough to know that when something is useful and valuable, then you've got to go into it. So if I were to talk about my current favorite set of things, everyone started with ChatGPT, so I'm no different. I have a paid account for ChatGPT, and at the moment it's just the basic pro version. I'm not anywhere near the max, and it's enough for my needs in that regard. But I also have Claude and Perplexity and Gemini.
Okay.
And within Gemini, I then got into the Google stack. And actually, the Google stack, when you're on Google One and you're paying for it, and you've got the Pro, there's a number of things. And one of my favorite pieces of the Google tool stack that I think is pretty amazing is Notebook LM.
Right.
So those are kind of right now my go-to. If I look at the things that I'm now adding to the journey, recently I started using CapCut and Canva. I haven't really used them. I've paid for it, but I got to get to know them. And the other one that I've got a subscription for is Manus, the free version at the moment.
Yeah.
And part of the reason is, and I'll be honest, I've played around with NA10, I've played around with Zapier and Make, and I've done whatever. But there's only so much my little brain can take, right? And here's an important thing, I think, for everybody out there. My journey through life has involved lots of use of different tools. My legs were a tool for a time when I was young. I used to walk everywhere, right? So they were a tool. My hands, tool. Bicycle. My dad taught me DIY and things around the house, how to fix things, screwdriver, hammer, paintbrush, whatever, right? I then got a bike. So I used to go around on my bike. That was another tool. I learned to drive. The car became a tool. I had a pen, pencil, notepaper. These are all tools, right? The point I'm trying to make is that just because AI is the current hype. We have to remember the context in which we're using things. And AI is a tool, a really great tool, right? Don't get me wrong. I love some of the freedoms and productivity gains it gives me. But it's like every other tool I've had in life. I'm on a journey to understand and to be able to use these tools. At the moment, we've got a lot of people wanting to use the tools, but they've forgotten one really important aspect. And it's the same with everybody who's in business. They've got some knowledge, they've got some expertise. If you do not invest in learning about the tool, then two things happen. The first one is you will then be limited in the use of your tool to the knowledge you have about the tool. You're setting your own boundaries, you're setting your own limits. And sometimes people will blame the tool rather than their own shortcomings. We're human, right? And they'll chuck it away. It doesn't work. It's no good. So the first thing to remember, we're all on a journey. And the journey is we need to know more about what the tools can do. And that brings me to the second thing, which is that every tool has its own limits. And at this point, it goes into something that we might talk about later, but AI has and will have the capacity to do many more amazing things. But it's built on a set of principles.
Right.
And those principles are mathematical and coded into software, right? So somebody took the time to put their input. It was a human that built the software. Humans that contributed to the models. Human knowledge that allow us to have this at our fingertips. Same with Google, right? And Bing and Edge and whatever, right? They're tools. So that we must understand what the limits are. And for the people who are out there right now, and there are many, and I don't blame them, but we've been programmed this way, right? So over the last 20 years, I've seen more and more people start to rely on their device and the tool as being the answer. I remember I said very early on, humans want to do the path of least resistance.
Right.
We're lazy. We want the convenience, right? That's why we ring Zomato. That's why we ring Amazon, right? That's why we just tap in our phone. I want it now and quick, and I don't have to do much.
Right.
And I think it's part of the dangers of new tools that are convenient. We got programmed by Google and similar search engines. How many of us only rely on the first 5 or 10 results on Google to choose what they want to do? Think about it. We have learned, we've taught ourselves to accept what's coming up in front of us and saying, that's the answer.
Right.
So when I use all these tools, always in the back of my mind is I will decide what comes out and what I will then pass on. I do not rely on the answers of what's coming to me. I didn't used to do it in my job. I got trained as an auditor to double check, triple check, verify everything, validate everything. So it's part of my nature to question everything, right? Maybe I'm an old school thinker, but we all need to learn more critical thinking in an age of fully available expert knowledge. I've heard some horror stories from people who should know better, right? People have relied on the answer from an AI chatbot and they've given it to someone else and said, here's my knowledge, expert opinion, guidance, whatever. Someone has relied on that to do something that didn't go the way they wanted.
Right.
So I can't remember the current benchmark figures, but on average, I believe most of the LLMs have a 78 to 80% success ratio, i.e. they hallucinate, provide the wrong answer 20% of the time.
Right.
Ask yourself, in my life, at what point am I going to do the risk assessment of it's 80% right, 20% wrong? Is that 20% wrong enough for me to rely on to do work, to make decisions, to give other people guidance and advice? And for all those people, right, you told me earlier, right, you still do traditional development, full stack development using Mern and so on, because I've seen people who use Lovable, Bolt, V0, and all these other things. They're great, right? But remember, they're great for the first pass. I've seen people code something in 5 minutes, but then they've spent 2 days debugging the thing when they made a change, right? It's everything is about how the model reacts to your language. And that brings me to the third thing. 1, you got to learn more about its limits. 2, you got to learn about not relying on it, i.e. it's wrong 20% of the time. And the third one is people haven't learned how to interact with it. So they are taking what they learned from Google a lot of the time and doing the same thing with the chatbot. So that whatever they typed in Google, now they type in Claude, ChatGPT, or whatever. So I think the other piece is we have to go beyond surface level of what these tools do. So what I have tried in the last 18 months or so is I spend at least an hour a day experimenting, playing around, learning from others, and saying, how does my knowledge increase in order how to use these tools effectively so I can get better use of them in order to help the people I want to help.
So in a nutshell, we all should use AI by keeping our brains at the position and not by keeping our brains aside. And secondly, that we are very, very bound to use AI in a very responsible manner, because AI is something that has a brighter side as well as a darker side, and you need to choose responsibly which side you are on up to, right?
I think there's also something built in it, mostly as a reinforcement bias. And by the way, if you don't understand bias, then
Yeah, I
I
understand.
also take a look and saying, how many types of bias are there? I was shocked when I first found out, but I found somewhere there were at least 48 types of bias. And one of the things that is also humans do as a result of what we're doing with Google and elsewhere is this confirmation bias. Whatever's coming in front of us, we're already saying it's the truth. We reaffirm, confirm, I believe what you're telling me. And the point that I'm trying to get across is that just because we're getting an answer doesn't mean we have to believe the answer. But that doesn't mean we can't take it the other way, right? And one thing I've also noticed, nearly every tool out there, all of the LLMs, they're so damn optimistic. Everything's, it's brilliant, it's fantastic. So what I've done is I've also done it the other way. I've asked the questions and to frame them in a negative connotation, negative framing, negative context, and say, give me the worst case. Tell me what's wrong. Why? Because I want to get the opposite view. I want to have a sanity check. We should all check against what we're reading and questioning and saying, is this truly the answer? Is it truly the path I want to follow? I don't want to be responsible for a client coming back to me and saying this is crap, right?
Mhm.
It's not my nature. I want to over deliver, under promise.
Right.
So that piece is something I think we also need to have a step back and say, okay, if you out there today are relying on the LLM to give you the answer and you're giving that off to your clients, are you really doing the right thing by your clients? And are you actually prepared to put your reputation on the line? It's
Very
something that I had in my governance roles. When I did governance of leadership as non-executive directorships, that's what you're taught. You challenge what the executives are doing. You challenge the route, the decision making. You challenge what people are telling you. Challenge yourself.
Mm-hmm. Pinpoint, accurate. So, since you have this vision and you have this clarity of how, when, and in what scenarios can AI be used, how do you suggest your clients to approach AI ethically? Because this is very important for small and mid-sized businesses to have. So, how do you take care of it?
Right? I think you missed one important step as well, right? In order to have ethical AI, you've got to be ready for AI. Right?
Yeah.
It's a key point. And this is something that I think many people forget. Like all other technological advancements, how ready is your business? Remember the principles of systems.
Mm.
Everything in a system is based on three things. And those three things are input, process, output. Okay, so even if you're not familiar with technology, software development, every business has an input, a process, and an output,
Right.
right? So whatever we're doing, the input is I will give an employee a task. The task will then be processed, and the employee will deliver something at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Systems live off one other key thing, and that is feedback loops. So we have the input, the process, output. Then there's a feedback loop. Was the output what the input needed, right? Or what I said the employee should do? AI is still a system. It still
Mm.
relies on input. Remember I talked a little bit ago about people learning how to engage and prompt. That's the input. The better you are at your input, the greater the chances that things will be processed in a way to give you your desired output. Now, the number one thing all AI relies upon is what?
Mm.
Let's see if you can answer the question.
Data.
Bingo. So, right, which leads us to that familiar terminology, right? Garbage
Mm-hmm.
in, garbage out.
Right.
So, point about introducing AI into a company is what can you reasonably expect data availability in a format that's good enough to make business decisions?
Mm.
Because if you're introducing AI, it goes back to why are you introducing it?
Right.
And it's like every other tool. You've got to make an assessment and says, what do we want to achieve by implementing these tools and possibilities and capabilities? Many IT companies use something called CMMI. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Maybe you're not. For our listeners, CMMI stands for Capability Maturity Index.
Okay.
Right? That means how capable is an organization of accepting something? I'm sure I missed one M, but it's okay. It's
Yeah.
how capable are you
Yeah.
to do something. So that means, if you don't assess as a business and you help your clients to assess as a business whether they can adopt these tools in the first place, what are the gaps, the barriers, the changes people have to take in order to get there, then you're not doing the right thing. So one of the things I do for people when I'm talking about how to introduce the topic, we take a look at where can it be best helped. And how do you introduce things that says, if you want to be reliant on an internal LLM to be making decisions autonomously on your behalf by introducing agentic AI, right? For example, it's a common topic right now. Or you want to work on the basis of saying, I want to improve a workflow. Then it goes back to saying, what do I want to introduce first? What kind of tool? Should I introduce some kind of workflow automation? And therefore you might want to introduce, I don't know, Power Automate. right? Because many people have got Office 365. It's part of the platform. They get it for cheap pricing. It's Microsoft are pushing it, whatever. I'm not trying to say that that's what you should use. Or do you go for someone like the company I work for, Blue Prism, and work with some of their robotic process agents or UiPath, right? And they're agents at the moment. So it's a number of different things that says, go back to basics. What are we trying to achieve? Then decide what could we think about implementing.
Okay.
When introducing the tool, the number one thing that gets overlooked is how are we going to bring the people along with us who are going to use this in their daily life. We have to get them educated and ready to be able to say, I'm going to be comfortable using this now in my world. Humans don't like change.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So we're resistant, and especially when it's done to us.
Right.
So part of the journey is to get small groups of people together. Everyone today, the number one thing today, if you look at all the research, that people are worried about, AI is going to replace me. So when you say introducing AI ethically, for me, ethics includes the idea of keeping humans secure. And thinking then, okay, yes, as a business owner, I want to make a commercial profit. Yes, I want to do something interesting, but what I want to do is to make sure that humans are safe and secure. Right. That means making my employees safe and secure. Many times I've seen people talk about them telling their staff, I'm going to introduce AI. People automatically start doing their resume on the job boards and looking for a new job. And the number one killer of small businesses is key people disappearing at the wrong time. It contributes hugely to whether businesses are successful or not.
Right.
So the other side of AI is to do what I call incremental introduction. Start with something small, something that can, it's the same principle I've done all my life, right? Success breeds success. So introducing something really big and complex straight away is going to end in failure. Too many moving parts. But if you introduce something that is supporting what people do, makes their life easier, better, makes the customer more successful, then you adopt something that says, let's try it out. And in effect, you create a stack of small, easy wins that build on top of each other, rather than one great big outcome that says, too many people are going to be needed, too much money is going to be needed, and it's more likely to fail. So introducing AI ethically is about what can the company absorb, what it is ready to do. Is it mature enough? Because invariably what we find out is that the number one thing you need to do, fix the data.
Right. So this was from the company side of you, on how should they approach AI and how they should use AI in order to provide a secure guideline or a secure way to help users or help the customers out, right?
Right.
But what about the audience? Like let's take it this way. There are
Yeah.
many people who are curious about AI, but they are very lost or they are very intimidated by this space or by the fact that AI is going to replace them, right? So, what would you like to say to these people, or what guidelines would you like to give to these people?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, it's like everything in life. Nothing is more worrisome than not knowing what's going on. And I think it all starts with self-education a little bit. Now, that I'm not saying that you try and do everything by yourself. I know it's all there, but a few weeks ago, right, I talked about this various topic that actually came back and said, you know what, it's difficult to start with AI. And I think what you need to do is give yourself a little roadmap. And that is, you need to think about what you're doing and why. Look at your current processes, right? And think about how you would optimize those. And where that normally starts, and it actually has been proven by many different things, that all the studies are showing that humans want AI to be their assistant, to help them, not to take over things that they do. Productivity gains are the number one area where people are seeing great adoption of AI. So what you want to do is to think about where something that used to take you many hours can now be done in minutes or hours. So that means automating everyday tasks, something that people do daily that's repetitive, mind-numbingly boring, perhaps. Right? And what that happens is that doing these small things and finding ways to help reduce friction in a process is about fixing challenges and problems of today. So you're helping people solve the problem today. So look at what is the area where automation and AI can reduce repetitive tasks. Secondly, what that happens, that has a second impact in that once that time is freed up, then you can think about what people can do with that freed up time. Now, the second thing you should do is to start exploring your medium-term game plan. That says, we talked about the issues and challenges about data. Everybody has data all over the place in various formats, structured, unstructured, written, printed, PDFs, whatever. What you want to be doing is to saying, how can I now use that data to help me in my longer term forward thinking? Most people do what I call historical insights. How is what happens in the past inform me to make decisions today for the future? So that's what we call the rear view mirror. What you want to do in the midterm, right, longer term than automating repetitive tasks, is to then say, what can I understand about the pattern and behavior in myself, my employees, my customers, the market, so I can start to think about planning better for what's coming down the line. So then you start to get some kind of trending, forecasting, and do some predictive models. You move from historical reporting to, can I do a sales forecast? Can I do a pricing forecast? Can I do a market forecast? Whatever it might be. Can I understand why customers buy from us? What are the things that triggered them? So then I can make changes about how I engage and do my customer journey.
Right.
Then the last thing is, I would say, let's go for some big disruption. How would I do some transformational, disruptive AI projects, especially if they got a high risk, but they might have a high reward as well? So this is where you're looking in 2-3 years' time, but you will start planning for it now. And that is where you might say, well, actually, as an agency, right, you might say, rather than doing traditional development programs, I might create some AI-based platforms and products that I can use to accelerate my development.
Right.
Not quite vibe coding, but things that are real, that are tangible, that actually have a big impact. People are doing things like creating automated test data generators, right? So they're using the work they've done before, and they're creating an AI-based test data generator.
Right.
That's trained on what you do, the kind of development you're doing, both for UI, for backend, for whatever. Now, it could be that you're also reimagining an entire industry. And actually right now, things like Lovable, Bolt, and so on are reimagining the whole development scenario. People now saying, if AI codes and does 80% of the code, what are we going to do? The other side of it is to now look and say, what if I created AI employees? If I create AI employees that do certain things completely as a role or function, how do they fit into my future organization workforce? How do they work alongside people? Not just replace people. Remember, AI works best when you augment a human with some AI. Now, what this is all about, and it matters, is that you're doing things in a mature way. Small wins build confidence in what you're delivering.
Right.
At the same time, it reduces risk internally and for your clients. The medium-term planning and looking forward, it encourages people to think about the future, helps you with agility to make changes because you're better prepared for what's coming down the line, and allows you to be a bit more future ready. The disruptive AI long-term, that's where you're going to differentiate from competitors who aren't using AI, aren't doing these things, and are going to get left behind. So start today, even with small things, and you'll still be positioning your business, team, and products for a massive competitive advantage.
Right. Very true. Very true. And
It's not too late.
Yeah, definitely, it's not too late. And there's a lot to discuss about AI, and there's a lot to learn about AI. AI is evolving and growing exponentially each and every day as we progress, right? And the discussions are never ending, and the discussions are endless over AI, right? We cannot discuss enough about AI.
Sure.
But I would just like to have a break on this conversation, and I would like to thank you for being on the show and providing us such sharp insights on each and everything that you knew, each and every expertise that you had, businesses, sales, AI automation and future of the work, right? Few ending words, if you like to guide our audience about anything, would like to address out.
Look, one of the things that so why I'm here today, right? Apart from you inviting me, and thank you very much for that, for yourself and Azal and the team. I've really enjoyed it, and also enjoyed the way you framed everything and the questions. So thank you very much for that indeed. Thank you to the audience for listening as well, because I know sometimes it's difficult to sit here for all this time and journey. And so thank you for that. If I were to give a few thoughts, right? Number one, I'm probably, many decades into my life, but part of today and being around today is there's a great energy. Let's all use that energy to build things that are going to help everybody. Yes, we should do it for commercial gain, but I also like to think that whatever is out there, and we live in a generation, I think, where, my son's generation, who's 22 and younger, they think about things and the world and the planet and the future in a different way than I did. We do have some different things. I'd urge people three things. The first one is create. We live in an era where it's easy to create. Physical, digital, doesn't matter. If we're going to have more time as a result of tools and platforms that give us freedom of time, what can we create? Unfortunately, we seem to have a tendency to consume, not produce, right? Skills are being driven in a different way. So if we get more time, what are you going to do with that more time? So the first person to think about is, as we get more time, can we create? Can we learn new skills? Can we use those skills to then produce? And I think that's the point I'm making. If I can learn new skills at my age, anybody can do it. I tell you.
Correct.
The second thing is, if I could tell, lessons of my 20-year-old self, if I can have the possibility to create, in my 20s, take more risks. Don't accept that you just have to work for somebody and that's it. We have the world's knowledge at our fingertips. We have people out in the world who engage with us every day on platforms that allow us to share our knowledge, increase our knowledge, engage, find mentorship, find whatever. That means don't be a lurker, right? I see so many people, right? When I talk about consumption, they listen to podcasts. They go on YouTube, watch YouTube videos. They read endless forum posts. They read Reddit nonstop. They're on Medium reading. Have the courage to take the lessons and do something. There is no right answer. Fail is not wrong. Fail is the first step in your journey. Fail is where you're learning. Humans learn when we are uncomfortable. Humans learn by experimentation.
Right.
So experiment. The third thing I'd like to go back is, if you're good enough, you will attract people. And the number one thing that many people have is self-doubt. Courage and self-doubt are opposite ends of the spectrum. Have the courage to break through your self-doubt and say, I can do it. If you've got the world's knowledge and you've got the courage and you create, then you can attract. So it's easy. And you know, one of the things I've worked a lot on in the past 10 years, I worked in the healthcare service in the UK. I have seen a growth in the rise of anxiety and anxiousness. People worried, people scared, people unsure. Even founders, right? We go through this. Right. It's a lonely life. Even me, I go through this whole thing. Am I good enough? Am I an imposter? Do I know what I'm talking about? Right? There are people out there better than me. There are customers out there who, you know, forgotten me. It happens. We're human. But you got to be persistent and go beyond that self-doubt to get on with it. I think there's too much, I don't want to say whining, but too much not holding yourself to account to say, I can do it. People are saying, I can't do it. And they'll give you a whole bunch of reasons. But I think if you take the first, you know, three things I said, world's knowledge, start to produce, start to create, use people around you, then you will find people willing to help. Sometimes you have to pay them to help. So, you know, I don't mind. That's okay. But remember the thing that matters about that courage to go on and do it, is you're investing in yourself. It's not about investing for nothing. So invest for a purpose. Invest for that goal or dream that you wanted. And, you know, every person out there who does similar kind of conversations and mentors people, they all say the same thing, right? The word impossible does not exist, because it stands for I am possible.
Very, very accurate and very interesting to hear that. And I believe our audience will also resonate with what you said right now, and will definitely work upon the tips and the guidelines that you gave to them. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for being on
I
our
really
show.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, and we believe that we'll see you in our future progressions and a future video with more such exciting and informative conversations ahead, right?
Thanks so much.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really
Thank you
appreciate it.
so much.
Forward to it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the show, Aziz. Bye bye.
You're welcome. Bye for now.